Bun venit la o nouă ediție a emisiunii Ziua se apropie. În minutele care urmează vă prezentăm raportul european de la Bruxelles din octombrie 2024 din seria de rapoarte lunare de acest fel. În ediția de astăzi, moderatorul Yossi Lempkowicz împreună cu invitații săi Tomas Sandell și Hildegard Bentele vorbesc despre împlinirea unui an de la evenimentele din 7 octombrie și despre atitudinea lumii și a Uniunii Europene față de aceste evenimente. Vizionare plăcută!
As the first anniversary of the October 7 unspeakable massacres committed by Hamas terrorists in southern Israel communities approaches, and amid the ongoing war in Gaza, as well the escalation with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we saw yesterday's unprecedented missile attack by Iran against Israel, we are here back today to comment these events in the studio of the European Parliament in Brussels for a new monthly talk show produced by the European Coalition for Israel. I would like also to remind that there are still 101 people held in captivity in Gaza. In this program, we are going to discuss the latest attack by Iran and developments in Israel's war against Iran proxies. But also, we are going to talk how the one-year anniversary of the October 7th horrors is being perceived in the European Union. With us today in the studio to discuss all these topics are German member of the European Parliament, Hildegard Bentele from the European People's Party, and Tomas Sandell, founding director of European Coalition for Israel. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz from European Jewish Press and Europe Israel Press Association. I will start with you, MEP Bentele. This week, as I mentioned, will mark the first anniversary of the brutal massacre of October 7th. But before we are going into this topic, let me ask you about your reactions to the event of the last few days. We saw the elimination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut. We saw the Israel's army starting a ground operation in South Lebanon. And yesterday, this attack by Iran with almost 200 ballistic missiles against Israel, which forced million people, like all the population, to go to bomb shelter. What is your reaction? And do you think that with this escalation, we are going to an all-out war in the region?
Yeah, let me start by saying this all would not have happened without the events on 7th of October a year ago. This is a direct consequence. We have now almost fully escalation of war in the Middle East. Nobody wanted to have this. And I regret this terribly, because before 7th of October, there was a path of peace, of stability in the region. We had still the effects of the Abraham Accords. So Israel was seeking peace with its Arab neighbors. So we were on a good path. But this is most probably why the attack happened, because there are people on the Palestinian side, terrorist organizations who do not want to have peace, who do not want to have Palestinians and Israelis living in peace together and, slowly founding a working economy and so on. So this is terrible. We have been on a good path, and now we have a throwback, which is terrible, with a lot of people displaced, killed in strong humanitarian terrible humanitarian situation, and we have still hostages being kept. So we are in the worst situation ever. But this is all due to the unthinkable and unreasonable attacks on 7th of October. So this is a terrible consequence, and I regret this terribly. But now I also understand that once this happened, Israel had to react.
I noticed that you, during your career, you have been in the German foreign ministry, and as a diplomat, you have been posting in Tehran, in Iran. So I would like to have your comment about, was this, I would say, a surprise for you, what happened yesterday, which already happened in last April?
Unfortunately not, because we know that Iran is the worst, one of the worst, enemies of Israel, always waiting for the opportunity to attack and to extinguish actually Israel. So this is a permanent position of the Iran government, and I regret that Germany as well as the EU were not active enough on Iran. And this is what I was asking for in the last plenary session. We have to have a more, decisive position on Iran together. We have given up a little bit, on sanctions, on the nuclear program and so on. So we have given too much leverage to Iran. And I hope for the new commission, for the new high representative, to take stronger action on Iran.
Tomas Sandell, the same question for you, your comments, your reactions to the latest event, especially yesterday's missile attack.
Well, MEP Bentele rightly mentioned October 7 as a starting point, a flashpoint. I will go back to what happened, of course, just a few days ago with the Israeli intervention in Lebanon. And we issued a press release where I pointed out that this could have been prevented if the international community had lived up to its commitments under UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which demanded a full disarmament of Hezbollah, which demanded that Hezbollah would be withdrawn from the Israeli border. So often Israel is accused when we speak about international law. They say, Israel doesn't live up to its obligation under international law. It's interesting how quiet it has been when it comes to implementation of something that should be so fundamental, that there cannot be, first of all, a militia in a sovereign country which is hijacking that country's sovereignty and then using it as a base for terrorist activities to a foreign country. So, and the international community had 18 years to do something about it, including making sure that ammunition were not stored into civilian homes, civilian institutions. Everyone knew about this, but nothing happened. So again, everything happens, to quote Secretary General Guterres, nothing happens in a vacuum.
You mentioned the UN Security Council resolution about on Lebanon. You were last week in New York for the annual General Assembly, and I would like to know, you had meetings there, so I would like to know what were then the reactions from the leaders that you met?
Well, thank you. Yes, we were there 1 full week, had 13 government meetings, including prime ministers and presidents. When I look back, I said it was a meeting with the good and the bad and the ugly, to quote Clint Eastwood. As a man of culture, I can quote Clint Eastwood, meaning that the ugly, clearly those who are misusing international law to isolate Israel diplomatically, politically. And I could mention countries, Iran has been mentioned, South Africa can be mentioned as well. The bad, I would say, those who know well what is happening, but still for various reasons, national interest, maybe some of them I know are running for a seat in the Security Council, they prefer not to get engaged. And that's very sad. Still the good, there are a few of them, often representing small countries like Fiji, like Paraguay, like Malawi. We had the privilege of meeting with the president of Malawi, for example, and Albania. I should mention Albania, very courageous country in Europe.
Muslim country.
Exactly. but with a very clear moral clarity. Among the EU nations, I would like to mention Czechia and Hungary, who voted clearly against. Again, there were many abstentions, and I think, of course, that's like the minimum that we can require from EU member states, including from Germany. Sadly, my country, Finland, the same goes for Latvia, who are both trying to win a seat on the Security Council, basically gave up their moral principles, and I think this is something that we need to point out.
MEP Bentele, coming back to the October 7th, which started the war, in fact, it gives Israel the right to defend itself. In what way this change your vision and your outlook on the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians?
It's a big frustration, because I was not aware, honestly, that the hatred goes so deep, that it was harvested, it was grown, it was constantly being fed to that point when it broke out. So it was prepared, it was fed, this hatred, and this is for me a terrible thing to see. And in addition, not only in the region but also on the streets of Europe, it was frustrating to see
the spillover,
and the outbreak of joy. The outbreak of joy on a completely inhumane action. So it was absolutely, for me, ununderstandable how this could happen. And this is, for me, there's a huge task ahead of us, how we can counter this hate, even from people who were not, exposed there. So it's so deeply rooted, and it was fed by the media, and it was constantly, so this is terrible. So we have to break these kind of circles of hatred. So how do we, we have, as Europeans, have experienced how to break it, but we also went to the catastrophe before we could break these circles.
Yeah. Tomas Sandell, next week we will mark this first anniversary of the 7th of October, which represent the slaughter of Jews, the greatest slaughter of Jews in one day since the Holocaust. How do you think this has changed the world? Has the world changed since October 7?
I would like to hope that this would be the case. I think for some, it has been the case, and I hear people both in the political space and others who tell me that something for me went up after October 7. There were things I avoided this question before, but then I saw that hey, we need to do something. Of course, it's a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call. I'm thinking of September 11. Which was a wake-up call for the U.S. and the whole Western world when we realized that the hatred that MEP Bentele mentioned is real, and sooner or later we will see the full expression of it if we don't find ways of containing it or fighting it. I'm thinking. I mentioned September 11, but I'm thinking of 1938 as well, and the pivotal moment when the Nazis invaded Sudetenland, and it was a similar situation. What would the international community do? And Hitler's, Chamberlain came back to London and said, "I have Hitler's word that this is all he needs." And in our civilization at that time, it was a gentleman's agreement. This is what he wants, and but of course it didn't stop there. And I think that appeasement, which we also see now, we just say, well, let's just calm down, and maybe if we throw them Israel, they will be happy, and it stops there. It will not work, and. I think the historical parallel to see that, the sooner we realize that this is a real problem, the better off we are as a civilization.
MEP Bentele, we mentioned the spillover of the October 7th into Europe and the pro-Palestinian demonstration, anti-Semitism. Remembered all these slogans from the river to the sea and everything. So this rise of anti-Semitism, how can we protect the society, the civilization in Europe against the rise of Jew hatred?
Yes, we did it in Germany, how we call, Aufarbeitung, when we, had been very transparent, what happened to the Jews. Because at that time, nobody wanted to talk about it. So, we have visits of schools to concentration camps until the very day. If I recall my school time, it was obligatory for every class to go there. And I think maybe we have not done and made enough efforts, or we have maybe loosened it, but we have to see. This is imported anti-Semitism. It is imported anti-Semitism, and we have not reached this new generation of migrants who came with a different mindset. I would say we have made efforts with Germans, but we have neglected this new wave of migrants who are now Germans, Europeans, because this also happens in France and in other countries. It's not a German problem, but we have to adapt. And I can see the teachers they cannot cope with this task because they do not have the knowledge and the answers for this kind of anti-Semitism. So we have to rethink education and how we stand to our values and how we tell them why it is important that Israel is not being extinguished. There's a reason for that, So we have to rethink our programs, and we have to be very strict and this is what we do, because we also say this is a crime. If you make very clear stop signals, if you use this kind of statements, it is a legal offense. You be punished for that. Also, that we dissolve very quickly this kind of demonstrations. So the police is very active against them. We don't let them go. And also, and this is the last thing, we should not fund organizations who have, connections to terrorists. We have to be very careful. And I know our Senator for Culture, Joe Triello, he's trying to insert an anti-Semitism clause into contracts with, cultural institutions. You have to refrain from anti-Semitism, or you have to even say that, that you have to be positive to the existence of Israel. You have to commit yourself to that. If you want to receive public money. And I think this is exactly what we should do at the European level. We have to control the money flows. Where do they go?
Can I interject there?
Yes, sure.
On the same topic, I used this analogy before, and sometimes people have gotten upset. But of course, after the war, we had a term called denazification, basically meaning that there needed to be a re-education process. And but I think it's very clear that in the Palestinian territories today, we need a de-radicalization process. And sadly, you have not been here long enough to the EU support for Palestinian textbooks is when we ask the question, how were these people educated that stormed the borders on October 7? So part of this responsibility comes back to us as Europeans, and I say even particularly as I'm from Finland, and Finland played a very critical role in overseeing the education in the Palestinian territories. So I think de-radicalization is something that needs to be implemented immediately, and funding need to be conditional, made on this commitment to say, listen, we want to create a different kind of society for the future.
MEP Bentele, we saw yesterday after what happened with this missile attack, the European Union issued a statement clearly condemning this attack and reiterating the EU's right, Israel's right to self-defense, which was in the beginning also after the 7th of October. Do you think that this will somewhat rebalance the position in the European Union for Israel. I mean,
we are now at we are newly composing the European Commission. So I think there is now a moment of, momentum of change, of hope. We can do policies differently. We will a new high representative. We'll have new commissioners. So I really hope that this kind of statements also then, stay on and are being followed up. That it's not just a one-day impression, but that really triggers then, according action. It is difficult because member states are divided, but I really hope for the new high representative that she can better unite the European Union, and that she takes a more active stand, a more, let's say, neutral stand also, or more, less subjective stand than in the past. So
because
I think
because she maybe better understand the situation.
Better understand, or coming from a new perspective, because I think honestly, the last High Representative took a very one-sided stance, not uniting the member states, but but splitting them. So that was not a good role. So we can play a better role. So I hope for the new Commission in the next weeks and months to come up. And today I talked to the Belgian Foreign Minister, the person who will take over the portfolio for humanitarian aid, and she gave me the signal that she's also working in this direction to be more united and to be more supportive and more stable also.
In the new parliament,
in the new Commission and the new Parliament.
So I will ask you both a question regarding the 7th of October, the first anniversary. And I would like to know how will you mark this anniversary?
I will be in Strasbourg because it's a plenary week in Strasbourg. So we will have a commemoration on initiative of a colleague. So we will commemorate this day. And I support those colleagues in the Foreign Affairs Committee who are working on a common resolution for the next week. I think we should really show that we have a position on this event. We should not, put too many things inside this resolution. We should really focus on the 7th of October and condemn very clearly what has happened, and also to ask for the release of the hostages, because too little people talk about it anymore.
Absolutely. Tomas Sandell, the same question.
Yes, I will be in Geneva, and Geneva being in many ways a capital for ecumenical organizations, we have brought together faith leaders, because during these months, I've heard from my Jewish friends, many asking, well, where are all the Christians? They are so quiet. And so we have invited a good composition of a Catholic pair from Paris, an American very influential evangelical leader coming from the US, and there are people from other spheres of the wider Christian church, to make a clear expression of solidarity with the Jewish people. Because we have to keep in mind that anti-Semitism can also exist in Christian circles. And when I was in New York, I saw a person with a sign. His face was covered, but he said, Netanyahu is Hitler, and he had a large crucifix on him. And I had such a terrible time seeing this message and see it combined with the crucifix. So I think as people of faith, we need to stand up in solidarity with our Jewish friends at this time. And this is what we are intending on doing in Geneva next Wednesday.
Thank you, Thomas. This brings us to an end of this edition. I would like to wish all viewers Shana Tova Umetuka, which means a sweet new year. We are Rosh Hashanah this evening. I would like also to thank MEP Bentele and the founding director of the European Coalition for Israel, Tomas Sandell, for joining this program. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz, and you have just watched the European Report. See you again next month.
Emisiunea Ziua se apropie, se încheie aici. Vă mulțumim pentru atenție și vă dăm o nouă întâlnire săptămâna viitoare la aceeași oră. Sunt Codruța Burghelea, vă spun la revedere și Dumnezeu să vă binecuvânteze!